Welcome to the first session in the HR Management module. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify the role of HR planning in building the competitive advantage of your company. And secondly, you should be able to describe the process of HR planning. So, when you think of HR planning, what comes to your mind? What do we mean by HR planning? HR planning is a process of forecasting the organization's demand for and supply of manpower needs in the near future. By this we mean finding the right number of people for the right kind of job, at the right time, and the right place. So, in other words, HR planning is responsible for arranging the right people for the right job from all available sources. And not only this, it also anticipates the vacancies that might arise due to promotions, transfers, retirements, terminations, plans for manpower accordingly. As a business owner, how then do you establish your HR plan? In establishing your HR plan, you must ensure that it is aligned to your business objectives. This is what makes your plan valid. Looking at the slide you have now, you can see that you have your business plan. And from your business plan, you have to identify your current HR situation, how many staff you require, when you need them, the sources of supply, and of course, the budget. Once you have identified these elements, you then break them down into separate plans that will be implemented to meet your HR needs. For instance, the recruitment plan, training and development plan, compensation and benefits plan, and retaining top employees plan. Remember, the HR plan can easily be adjusted at any time to suit your company's needs at different stages. Let's now look at the foundation for your HR policies. Your HR policies are created on the back of your company's action plans. And of course, your company's actions plans, as we saw in the previous slides, will be based on your business objectives, so that the foundation of your HR policies should meet your business objectives. Your HR policies, be it recruitment, compensation, training, appraisal, are not fixed regulations. These rather are flexible, and they are designed to suit each development stage according to the relevant objectives. HR policies should be legal, public, logical, and reasonable. So, for instance, if the statutory maternity leave is 3 months, your policy should be compliant and reflect this. HR policies should be based on the company's objectives and realized through the company's action plan. So what then happens if there is no HR planning? What would happen? As we can see on the slide, it means that when you don't have HR planning, you resort to solving problems on a case-by-case basis. This will result in a waste of human resources when you are investing without a focus and there is no alignment with common objectives. HR management is also reduced to only managing the administrative aspects of HR. You then have inefficient management of HR budgets, and ultimately you will lose good employees. No planning is planning to fail. Trial and error is not an effective management strategy because it increases risks and is costly in terms of time and money. Planning is a useful solution to inform the company about where it is, what has to be done, and how to minimize risks. Now that we have an understanding of what HR planning is, what then do we mean by HR management? HR management is concerned with the management of employees from recruitment to retirement or from entry to exit. The definition we have on the slide says it's all about acquiring services of people, developing their skills, motivating them to the foremost level, and making sure that they continue to maintain their commitment towards the organization. So when we look at it, HR management covers the fields of staffing, that is when you hire people, retaining people, the pay, the benefits, managing their performance, change management, and of course ultimately taking care of exits from the company. When we put HR planning and HR management together, what is the connection? Put simply, HR management may be described as a house with planning as the foundation. As you can see from the slide you are looking at now, HR planning is the foundation of the house we have there. And on the foundation, you can see we have 4 pillars. We have recruitment, we have training, development, staff management, and retention. Those are the pillars supporting the house. And on the top of that house, you see HR management. Without planning, the house is built without a foundation. And if one of the 4 pillars is not strong enough, there is the danger that the house could collapse. A solid house, especially one that will support additions and expansions, requires a strong foundation and equally stable pillars. So you can see the connection between your HR planning and HR management. They go hand in hand. Let's look at the role of HR, the HR department, or the role of an HR manager. Some of the things that is expected is 1, they formulate certain strategies and execution of these strategies towards the realization of the company's vision. So for instance, if the company wants to employ more women into certain positions, the recruitment drive that HR is going to follow would focus on this. Another role is for HR to advise the CEO and department heads about policies and provide clarity on these policies as required. So they have an advisory function. Another one is that HR assists the line managers with any HR-related issues. Of course, we mustn't forget that HR cannot function well in any company without being familiar with the operations of all the departments. So that means that whoever is managing your HR, whoever is the head of your HR, they must know the operations of your organization. An important aspect of HR is compliance. Compliance with employment laws. This is very important. As a company, even as a small business owner, you want to protect your brand from the beginning, and you also want to maintain your integrity and reputation. Lastly, HR is there to manage employee records. Make sure they're accurate, up to date, and easily accessible. Let's look at some of the processes that support HR. The following are various HR processes. We see the first one listed on our slide is human resource planning. And as we mentioned earlier, this includes recruitment, selection, hiring, training, induction, orientation, evaluation, promotions, and layoffs. Another process is the employee remuneration and benefits administration. By that, we're talking about the pay, the compensation, and all the benefits package that you will give your employees. Thirdly, performance management. And last but not the least, employee relations. Now, one of the processes there, performance management, for example, is a continuous process. I know generally when we think of performance management, you may think it happens just once a year and that's the end of it. It is, however, a continuous process of setting objectives, assessing progress, and providing ongoing coaching and feedback to the employee to ensure that employees are meeting their objectives and career goals. When you have a good HR management in position, you will have top employee retention. The chart we are looking at now gives an overview of key HRM activities. It also emphasizes that HR planning is a continuous process based on a plan catered to each company and resulting from the business common goals. Again, you can see from the chart that planning is the foundation upon which all other HRM activities are built. Planning is what helps to link HRM activities with your business goals. And so it must not be carried out spontaneously or independently of your company goals. Saying that, who does what in HR planning? As the company owner, you decide the objectives and resources. You also set the direction for your HR policies. Your HR director or manager then does the HR planning and monitors the implementation of same. The HR director also develops and advises on HR policies. Your departmental heads or functional managers, if you don't have departmental heads, they have to develop departmental objectives and the HR needs within each department, within their own unit. They also manage the staff competency within their respective departments. We're now going to look at the process of HR planning. Looking at the slide we have now, you can see we have 6 steps. We're going to look at this in detail, but now let's just quickly glance through the steps. Step 1, we analyze the environment and current state of HR management. Step 2, we forecast the HR needs. Step 3, we forecast the labor supply capacity and we balance the supply demand. This then takes us into step 4, which is to develop our action plans, and we also develop and adjust our HR policies as appropriate. In step 5, we set our budgets. We get them approved. And in step 6, this is where we look at, we control, we review, and we adjust the plan. It is a continuous process. When you review the plan, when you adjust the plan, then you can go back and revisit any of the other steps, the prior steps, and make the corrections there. Let's dig in now and look at step 1. The first step in HR planning process is to analyze the current manpower supply in the organization in terms of the experience, proficiency, skills, etc. that an employee requires to perform a particular job. The future vacancies can also be estimated so as to plan for the manpower from both the internal, that is within the current employees, and the external, when you have to hire candidates from outside. You should also take into account factors that are likely to impact on your analysis, such as the use of technology, your customers, and your competitors, as you can see from the slide there. The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, all of these things you have to analyze in depth, because that is what is going to help you understand and know what your own current state is. Step 2, we then go on to forecasting the HR needs. And we're going to be looking at 2 common methods here. The first one is the labor assessment method, and the second one is the trend analysis method. The labor assessment method is based on the ratio between the turnover and the number of staff needed to achieve that turnover. So for instance, your sales volume. If you've set your objective or a target, a particular target as your sales volume, you then need to look at the number of staff that you're going to need to achieve that turnover. The trend analysis method, on the other hand, is based on a year-end study of recruitment trends at the company over a certain period of time. So for instance, as a small business owner, maybe you only started your company about 3 years ago or 5 years ago. So you look at the trend and to identify if this trend is likely to continue in the future. These are the 2 common methods that are used in forecasting HR needs. When we have done our forecasting, we then go on to step 3, which is to forecast the HR supply-demand capacity. And we'll be looking at 2 methods here. One is using the trend analysis, and the other one is using the ratio analysis. Using the trend analysis involves studying historical organizational employment levels. This is to help you predict what the future employment levels will be. So, for example, a hotel can determine that each housekeeper cleans 20 rooms in a day. That's their operational index. The hotel has perhaps 1,000 rooms and is projected to be at 100% capacity from September to December. So that's their peak period. But they normally run at 80% capacity during the rainy season. Using this method of trend analysis, the hotel management will be able to determine that they will need 50 housekeepers during the peak season and 40 during the rainy season. On the other hand, when we use the ratio analysis, this method links staffing levels to specific business activities. So for example, if a company knows that it employed 4 production operators to make 100 units of a product per week in the past, it can then forecast the number of production operators it requires based on the average number of units that it needs to make each week in the future. That is the difference. One focuses more on the manpower, the operational index, and the other focuses more on the production side. Once we have done your forecasting that way, we then develop the action plan, which is step 4. On the screen, you can see we've listed 4 plans. We have the internal source development plan, the recruitment plan, the plan to retain top employees, and a downsizing plan. Now, in the case of a deficit, the company may go either for recruitment, training, interdepartmental transfer, whereas in the case of a surplus, voluntary retirement schemes, redeployments, transfers or layoffs could be followed. At the bottom of the slide, you will see we've given you a breakdown of 2 different plans. One is the internal source development plan. And when you are doing that plan, you will look at things like the promotion, job rotation, training, and the flexible use of labor. The recruitment plan, you have to make sure you look at the purpose, the number, positions that you are recruiting for, how you are going to attract the candidates, the selection process, and of course, the orientation. So you can see that in developing your action plan, each of the plans, you need to break them down into the various elements that you will be covering in the plan. After you've developed your action plan, we now look at your budget. On the slide, we can see that we have a compensation and benefits budget, a recruitment budget, training budget, development, retaining, and redundancy. A breakdown of the training budget shows that we need to budget for the training needs analysis, hiring trainers, the audiovisual equipment that will be used for the training, other related administrative costs, the training materials to be developed. We'll also look at application and improvement after training and the training impact assessment. When you break down the elements in drawing up your budget, this will help you to ensure that you stay within budget, and ultimately this helps your plan. The final step in this process is the control, reviewing, and adjusting the plan. Because the effectiveness of the manpower planning process is to be evaluated. So, the human resource plan is compared with its actual implementation to ensure the availability of a number of employees for several jobs. At this stage, the company has to decide the success of the plan and control the deficiencies, if any. HR planning is a continuous process that begins with the objectives of the human resource planning, and it ends with the appraisal of feedback and control of the planning process. So when you control, you ensure that things are going on as planned. You identify your risks and opportunities. You then go on to review, which is to identify the right and wrong things or your weak and strong points. You adjust. That means you act promptly to ensure that objectives are being achieved. It is not advisable to fix the time for reviewing activities. Otherwise, your company may not capitalize on opportunities and prepare for contingency plans to tackle any possible risks during implementation. Now that we have looked at the 6 steps we need for this process for HR planning, we're going to be going on next to do the end of session activity. I would like you to pause and do this activity before going on to the next session.